is more tailored to our needs as opposed to what might be on the menu at this point in time. And we're gonna meet and hear Kitty's unique story. And I want to remind everybody, the best thing about these discussions is they are live and interactive. I love seeing the comments that are already in there. We got Vita, and it's snowing in Coatesville. Holy cow. But it's sunny in Cleveland. And we got Marty from Vermont. This is amazing. I love people coming together all over the country to talk about these interesting topics. And Kitty, you are in Arlington, Virginia, where it's not snowing today, but you never know what happens tomorrow. It's great to have you on here, and I'm going to probably compliment you multiple times throughout the discussion today, but really hats off to you for the thinking that you have been doing on this topic of where do we want to live as we grow older? And we'll dive into that with a little more detail here. But before we do, let's get to know you a little bit better. Tell us a little bit about your background and who you are. Whoops, you're muted. Sorry.
Okay, I'm here now.
Yep.
I'm Kitty Russell, and I was born in DC and have lived most of my life in Northern Virginia. Went to UVA, had a career in law firm administrative and then in the federal government, and retired in 2015.
Okay, and we like to say whenever somebody says that they retired, I like to remind them that you just graduated. You didn't retire. You just graduated to another type of life. And whenever I do that, people always throw into chat their fun terms for calling that phase in life something other than retirement. So you graduated, okay, and then I know because we chatted a bit after you graduated from your position. Well, actually, let's take that back. Before we dive into your mom and being a caregiver and some of those things, when you graduated, what kind of lifestyle were you living? Was that hard for you to stop working? Did you find that how did you find purpose after that?
Well, okay, so I retired at a time when a lot was going on in my family, and that became a new job. But to find purpose, I basically started doing art and dancing. And that's what I still do with my free time. I already was living in an urban environment. If anybody knows, I live in Shirlington, so I live walking distance to shops and restaurants and those kinds of things. So there wasn't a move, but the change in activities, I went back to doing the things I used to love doing in my 20s.
I love it. Oh, this is great. What a great example. Okay, so now let's dive into one of the life events that provided inspiration for what we're going to talk about today, and that's you had a mother, and her name is Alice, and you were her primary caregiver, correct?
Right. So around the time that my mother was a lady in her 80s, living in her own home in Arlington that she loved. And her plan was to live there for the rest of her life. And then she got dementia. And her children were busy, and we knew there were things, we knew something wasn't right, but we weren't really paying a lot of attention. Then another event happened in the family, and at any rate, it got things progressed, and it got to the point that I decided to time my quote retirement to spend more time figuring out my mother and what she needed. Weird things were happening. There were fender benders, people showing up at her door selling her new windows, new security system, people moving in with her. her yard man moving onto her back porch, which turned out to be a really good thing because Milton was there when she slipped and fell and broke her hip in the middle of the winter, and probably saved her life by finding her. But anyway, he lived on her back porch, and was somebody that was there. So it turned out to be a really good thing, although it wasn't real popular with the neighbors or the family.
Mm-hmm.
And so at any rate, she progressed, her dementia got worse. And the first year and a half of my retirement, I call getting Alice to safety, figuring out her finances, the windows that she bought. They set her up with an installment plan, and they set up to pay for them, and they set it up for auto pay 1 month late. So every month she was paying interest plus a late fee.
Oh my gosh.
So, I mean, things like that. The security system, I was able to intercept and get rid of it. But at any rate, there were a lot of things that had to be resolved. Meanwhile, she's going through the journey of, losing her mind, trying to hide it at first because she knew that it meant a change that she didn't want to make. And anyway, so things progressed. I ended up getting her into a life care community, selling her house to pay for that, and getting her to safety, to stability. And then when she was in the life care community, she moved through all the different levels: independent living, assisted living, memory care. Then COVID hit, and thank God she had moved to memory care because they went on lockdown. And it was a wonderful facility. We had little TV chats with her every week. But at any rate, she progressed through the as you do with Alzheimer's, and that was a 5-year process, and she was very well cared for. In the meantime, I learned a lot about how a really excellent facility provides that kind of care, and about living at the facility. And my mother's friends also lived there in Independent. So there were lots of interactions. And I started thinking, I'm not sure this is what I want, to live in a big building full of old people. And that's where I started talking to my friends and, trying to figure out, well, what do I want? And is it available? And that started the process of, trying to figure out, well, what do I want? And I knew that my mother's experience was living in a big building full of old people, where everything came to her. Even her doctor came to her. When she needed the doctor's appointment, the doctor came. And then I knew about places that were sort of more like resorts, where you go to some suburban area, not close to anything. And you live a life like you're on vacation, but it's in a community separate from everything else, with a bunch of old people. In both cases, you're living with a bunch of old people. So at any rate, that's where I started doing a lot of talking and thinking. And the end result was I figured out, what do I want? And what are the things I want in retirement? And then I figured out what that might look like. And then I started telling everybody who would listen. I wrote it up and started telling everyone who would listen. And somebody who I sent this to listened, and she was Melissa Stanton at AARP. And she sent a reporter my way, and the reporter wrote an article, and here we are.
I love it. What a great timeline. And I tell you, we could spend the whole hour talking about caregiving for somebody with dementia, but you gave such a very articulate snapshot at some of the challenges that I know that many of us face. And thankfully you were able to get your mom into a safe environment.
Yes.
And because I talk to so many people, I often hear the "I don't want to live with old people" comment, and then the adult daughter will say, but mom, you're old. Okay. And then, but I often like to reframe that is that it's not that I don't want to live with old people. It's on the street that I live on. There are old people living there, young people, married people, all different. It's not living in an age segregated environment is what some people are
Right.
hesitant to do. Um,
And
so
and yeah.
yeah.
And when I polled my friends, I mean, they're like, shoot me. Don't send me to one of those places. Shoot me first. I mean, it was pretty we were all pretty much in agreement that we didn't want to go to that building full of old people. But on the other hand, I really want the amenities. I don't want to take care of a property. I don't want I want things to be easy. I want to snap my fingers and things happen. If something breaks, I want to call the maintenance guy to fix it. So all of those things it's very efficient for the provider for the provider to have it all in one building.
Yep. And
So
and here I'm going to share on the screen, and I just dropped a link in chat. This is what happened when your friend sent your list. Is AARP ended up doing an article on what we're going to basically talk about today. And let me flip over here to a slide that you gave me of some of so you, as you said, you started making a list of what you wanted in a home. And here's your list. Do you want to walk through it?
Yeah, I or at least the most important things to me when I started thinking about it were I want to be in a city. I don't want to go to a segregated community where I have to drive to get to anything. I want to be walkable.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to be able to walk to restaurants, to anything that I want to get to. If not walkable, to have a short drive.
Okay.
The other thing, I really didn't like the idea of having to go into a building and get on an elevator and ride up the elevator and walk down a hall to get to my home. I wanted a home that I could enter from the outside.
Okay. And
Walk in. I
now
wanted my own stoop.
yeah. Now that's presents a little bit of challenge in an urban environment, right?
Right. Right.
So the okay, but I love it. I mean, I keep on going. I love these your list that you created here.
And then the other thing is I want my own place. I want control of it, but I don't want, if something breaks, I don't want to have to deal with fixing it. I want it to be, I want maintenance. I want transportation. And we were talking about this statistic that on average, people spend the last 5 to 10 years of their life not driving. So I wanted that. I wanted just quote amenities, maybe a cafeteria if I don't want to cook, shopping. And then as I need it, I want convenient access to, healthcare and doctor, dentist, whatever I might need as I get older. And then I also wanted to be connected to people of all ages. And I care about price because, I only have so much that I can pay for all of this. But anyway, the biggest challenge was, living in the city and walking in from outside, because those were sort of opposite. I mean, if you live in a city, if you live in a separate place, then it's not a city if there's a lot of them.
Yeah. Now the
So
good thing is that these new sort of suburban urban enclaves have begun to pop up, and here in the Washington D.C. area, I mean, like as you had mentioned, Shirlington is kind of a
yeah.
accessible, walkable area. There's these town centers and things of that nature. So it's no longer okay, well, I want to live in a densely urban environment. I've got to move to Chicago, DC, Boston, what have you.
Right. Or I have to move to a big building, because you're right. Shirlington is a collection of sort of mid-sized condo and apartments. But at any rate, so those desirable features, I thought about it and talked to people about it. And what I ended up with was, oh, and meanwhile in the news, every time I would turn around in the news, there's some crisis, and like a homeless crisis, or people becoming homeless, or people being displaced by a fire, and the solution was, oh, we're going to put them up in a motel. So they find a motel on the outskirts of town, and and that's where they put people while they're dealing with whatever the crisis is. So the wheels started turning, and I tend to like motels. And I ended up with this idea, well, a motel is a pretty space efficient concept. So how about an urban motel retirement community?
Okay.
And that's where I
okay, so let me I've got some screens of your vision, and you put something together for the article, which I thought was cool. And folks, here's the thing. What I love about talking to Kitty about this is that she may not ever find a place with all the check boxes that she just said. But if we don't put our dreams down, and we don't talk to people, and we don't imagine it, it will never happen. That's one thing I can guarantee. And but when we sort of write down the things that give us love and passion and about where we live, we can make some steps. And so let's learn a little bit more about Kitty's vision that was featured in the article. And then I'm sort of eager to sort of field questions and hear what some of you all in the audience might be thinking about with Kitty's inspiration. So this is outlined in the article that I added the link in there, but talk about this urban retirement motel model.
Well, actually, so yeah, I was thinking motels, but I was also thinking, so if you lived in a motel, that's the independent living, but I also need all those amenities that I want, the transportation and the shopping and dining and doctors and all that. So my idea would be on the other slide is would be the straight lines are the motel or the independent living units, but that they'd be surrounding a corridor of larger buildings that provided all those amenities.
Oops.
So the idea is, if you think of a grid, you could take a city block and make it into this motel with the amenities in the center. And then if you walk out from any direction, you're walking into the city. That was sort of my concept. So in this case, on the left, you just got sort of rows of motel units. And on the right, I put them in courtyards. But in both cases, there's buildings providing amenities in the middle. And some of the amenities would be fitness activities, nursing, healthcare, dining, an admin office, retail, and maybe worker housing. Maybe especially if workers are getting harder to find, maybe there's a way to incorporate housing for workers, especially if they're workers from out of the country who are supporting people that don't necessarily live here, and they just need something small. So at any rate, that was the idea. I drew it up, and AARP published it. The other part of the idea was the units themselves. And I was thinking, really, if you had two modules, a living room and a bedroom with openings in the little blue squares or openings in between them, you could open and close different openings and get an efficiency, a 1-bedroom, a 2-bedroom, or more, just with those running those two modules, so that if people came and went, the modules could be changed, and that would
Yeah, you know
yeah.
what, that I love that, and because that's what a lot of hotels and motels do is if your whole family's staying there, you can get two adjoining rooms, and there's so many situations in the current design of not only senior housing but apartments and things of that nature where you've got specific one bedrooms, two bedroom studios. This blends it together. It's a very much more efficient way of utilizing real estate.
Yeah, and one of the things at my mom's facility, people come and go, people die, and somebody else moves in, and they have a crew of a construction crew that spends a lot of time in between occupants, customizing the rooms to for the new occupant, building shelving or closets or whatever they want. But this could work the same way. Somebody moves out and you customize it for the next
Yeah.
resident.
So no, I love it. And then okay, so we started with the AARP article, and then that led to it really created a bunch of reader comments that were kind of interesting, correct?
Yes, and so the reader comments, one of the things the readers did, or one of the sets of comments had to do with, well, those are Kitty's desirable features, but I have some more. And some of the other desirable features were a safe place, a quiet place, a place to park the car, a place with a swimming pool. I like this one, a place with cats, but no noisy dogs. Good internet access, close to the doctor. So these were just sort of desirable features. And then there was one comment about affordability. One lady actually said, don't give me bells and whistles. I need to be able to afford this. And I don't want extra bells and whistles. I just want what I want. So that was one set of comments. And then the other set of comments was broader. And the theme was basically converting existing structures. So you had people saying, well, there's lots of idle motels. You can build the community, but why not convert the motels that already exist for seniors? And I've actually seen some of that I went to Culpeper to visit my sister-in-law, and there's a motel that's been converted to a senior community. It doesn't necessarily have the amenities, though. But anyway, so converting existing motels, old shopping malls, converting those to senior cities, unused school buildings. And the person with that idea said, an unused school building, why not convert it to a housing for seniors on fixed incomes? Or a great old mansion, cut it up, maybe have shared spaces and have people that have their own quarters, but then come together to share, to share the common spaces, including the beautiful grounds. So that was, and then one person said, well, how about cottages? Not a motel, but cottages on the ground level surrounding a big building where the big building has the amenities. And then maybe that would allow for more outdoor space and more space for gardening, maybe a community garden.
I love
and then, yeah, and then one person actually wrote in and said, we did this when our brother needed assisted living, and we looked around. We decided to buy a motel and convert it for him. And I guess they converted it, but they invited other old people to live there, and now it's for sale, and that's in Northern California. So that was creative. And I think that there was something to do with the pandemic in there. They couldn't see him if they put him in an assisted living facility. So they did the motel concept instead.
Yeah, I love it. But you know what I love the most about this is that this is not uh, a bunch of senior housing experts coming together and designing the next type of senior housing that we're going to provide. What this is it's consumers, it's us sort of saying, here's what's on my wish list, and I wonder if there's a way that I can get some of these items on this wish list put together. And you know, your wish list is, as we saw when this article was published, your wish list is a little bit different than other people's wish lists, and that's okay. I think the important thing is for all of us to not be afraid to sort of go through the exercise that Kitty went through, where here are the things that are important to me, and writing them down and talking to your friends and talking to your loved ones and getting out there and begin searching for a potentially ideal space.
And Steve, one of my, I mean, it was sort of tongue in cheek, but one of my goals in writing all this down and sending it to the world is for someone to build it for me.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
mean, so if there's anybody that wants to,
The no, well, I think, well, there's somebody building it for you, but there's also this option of where this may lead to, the more you talk about your wish list and what you're envisioning, the like, for example, that family that bought the old motel, like, I mean, it's you know, who knows, there could be somebody else out there, there could be a very unique apartment building or neighborhood that's in an urban environment that somebody shares with you, and it's sort of like, man, I'm going to give that a shot. But the important thing is that all of us, I think so many of us, we put our head in the sand because this is talking about growing older, and I might get dementia. It's like, I don't want to think about that because I don't need to think about that. But this, to me, I can tell by the way that you've done it, that this has sort of added an additional purpose to your life. And it, look at the doors that it opened up. You got an article in AARP, and you've probably met a few new people as well.
yeah. No,
Um,
it's been, I mean, and also the other thing is in going through the process of defining this and writing down and figuring out, I've learned a lot about what I want. Like I didn't necessarily know, I mean, until I like wrote it down or thought about it, I couldn't have come up with this list. And the other thing is some things I didn't realize were as important to me as they are. Like living in a city is more important than I at first realized.
Now,
And probably the maintenance thing is too.
okay. And now, how, out of curiosity, and I want to jump in with some questions and comments from the folks that are in the audience, and I'm sorry, folks, I'm reposting the links to the articles. I didn't do that correctly earlier. The How far away is your current residence where you're living now to be an ideal living space for you? Uh, Out of curiosity.
So I currently live in a condo that is 2 stories. So I have a neighbor above me. But I'm walkable to Shirlington. So I'm walkable to, I'm as close as I can get, except I don't have all of the amenities. But if they built an amenity building, this could work very nicely.
Okay, great. And then and now uh we've got somebody that wants a little bit, going back to your original story with your mom and the gardener on the back porch. We got a question about that, but before I dive into that, so your mom getting Alzheimer's, like, how has that impacted your own sort of future view of yourself? I think I think a lot of us, we see Alzheimer's and dementia out there all around us, but it's very hard for any of us to imagine that that could happen to us one day. But we know it might. It's none of us have a crystal ball. Have you thought
Yeah.
about what would happen if you had some cognitive impairment like your mom?
Well, you know, also my mother was the first person in the family who had gotten Alzheimer's. It's not in the family. Nobody had any experience with it. And I think it's a shame that, you know, you have a parent with Alzheimer's. Now I know a lot about it, but the person down the road who, you know, I mean, it seems to be everybody has to learn it over again because nobody has the knowledge when they need it. But yeah, I mean, I think it's made me more interested in what I call safety for myself. Like my mother was very vulnerable in her being demented in her house by herself. And when I got her to the assisted living, to the life care community, that was safety. You know, once she was there, she was safe. And I think about that for myself. And one of the things that I've done, and I may never go there, but you know, these places, when mom fell and broke her hip, and Milton was there and saved her life, but she couldn't go to the place because they had a waiting list. So she had to live another 9 months in her house, with my sister and I, taking turns feeding her dinner and Meals on Wheels and Life Alert and all sorts of other things. But it took 9 months for a unit to become available and for her to progress up the waiting list. So I have already gone to that life care community and gotten myself on the waiting list. And it's not that I'll ever go, but it's a just in case thing. If something were to happen to me tomorrow, I'll be at the top of the waiting list.
I commend you in being brave enough to do something like that, especially in light of what you've just shared with us. Is that it's I think like your friend and all of our friends that say, "Oh, shoot me before you put me in a place like that," is what when you take that approach, you limit options that you might actually need that could make a more purposeful and less socially isolated lifestyle.
Right.
And
And yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
Oh, the other thing is this particular life care community, the deal is when you get to the top of the waiting list, you don't have to move in. They offer you a place. And if you say, I'm not ready, they're like, fine. And you can stay on the waiting list. So by getting on the waiting list, I'm making no commitment to go there. All I'm doing is buying insurance, you know, for if something should ever happen to me where I need a quick solution. And you know, I still want to move into my urban motel retirement community. But we'll see how things play out.
I love it. And you know, I mean, if that dream is achieved, that is wonderful. But if you can get closer to what you're envisioning than your current living arrangement, because you've gone through all this brainstorming, it should be easier to know when the time is right to make that move. Okay. And okay, great. Okay, so let's get to some of the questions here, and we're going to go back to your experience with the gardener. Milton lived on the back porch. The yard man gardener, was there a room on the back porch of your mother's house, or was the back porch enclosed Four Seasons back porch? You said the gardener moved onto your mother's back porch. Is a little confusing. Yeah, it's definitely an interesting.
It was a screened in back porch, and in the winter he had a heater. You know, he
Wow.
had one of those portable heaters plugged in.
And out of curiosity, like her home, did she didn't have an extra bedroom, or he didn't?
He didn't want to live in the bedroom. He
Wow.
was sort of homeless.
Okay.
So he lived on the back porch, and he was, I mean, when he became homeless is when he moved in with her.
Got it. Okay.
But
And
they sort of, she shared her house with him, but I made him move into one of the bedrooms when I had the porch painted, and he really didn't like it, being inside and it was only a week. But then he moved back to the back porch, and he
wow.
was there until I sold the house.
And not an ideal situation, yeah, but like you said, I mean, at the end of the day, he was there for your mom when nobody else was there, and that's a good thing. And
Well, and
yeah.
the other thing was Milton, every night Milton came in at 7 o'clock, and he and mom sat side by side on the sofa and watched Jeopardy and Wheel of Fortune every night. It was like their technique. So there was also, I mean, he was also a companion of sorts.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was a lovely friendship.
Yeah, and as adult children, it's in many ways it's probably hard to think about. My mom has a homeless person that she watches TV and he sleeps on the back porch, but thankfully he didn't take the homeless guy was not taking advantage of your mom. It's all the roofing guys and the contractors and the window guys that were taking advantage of her. Quite frankly, I bet you if Milton was around a little bit more, he could probably ward off some of the fraud that was committed on your mom. Okay, let's see. Patricia says, I think we need to be more positive about being older. We have so much to offer, and offer. Old is not a dirty word. I agree, and that's one thing that we're really trying to change here with a lot of the discussions that we have. The Let's see, I got the article up. Linda says the idea is basically a planned community. I know there is one in North Carolina that I believe has medical dental practices right within the community. However, it's not 55 plus. And see, that's Linda's comment is what I love about what you've done, Kitty, is that there may be some things that are very close to your wish list, but because they're outside of your radar and where you are in Northern Virginia, you don't know about it. And that's kind of exciting, is that if there's a way for us to kind of share resources. Oh, another resource that I wanted to share that I know you're a big fan of, and so am I, Kitty, is the AARP Livable Communities website. There, if you ever have time, folks, to go and browse the different articles and ideas and resources that are in this livable community section, which I'm gonna put into chat. Check it out. It's really pretty robust. Okay, let's see here. Let me see if I can get to some of the other comments. And yeah, go ahead.
I did have a conversation with friends about this idea of, does it have to be a 55 plus community? And the thing is, it doesn't really have to be, but if you're younger and don't need all those amenities, you might not be willing to pay for them.
Right. I think what we're seeing in I can't cite a specific neighborhood or community, but what we're seeing is that we can all benefit from having convenient medical care. We can all, and if you can create a intergenerational community that has a variety of amenities, and it can promote all ages living together in a harmonious way. I think one of the things that we know in the first wave of these large active adult communities, the Sun Cities in Arizona, where the residents basically refuse to pay a portion of their taxes because they're like, we don't need schools. Why are we paying for schools? We got to get out of that mindset. And I think we are out of that mindset now. You don't hear that happening much anymore, but we can all live together with these amenities. Let's see. Where are we at here? I think there are some continuing care life. This is Karen says, I think there's some continuing care life care communities that are absolutely fabulous. I know many people that have made the move and they're happy. Why is a senior living community that meets the needs of an older person a bad thing? And I can tell you, Karen and everybody, I have interviewed hundreds of people in my 33 years for articles, who've made the move to these communities. And most of them say the same thing. They say, I don't know why I was so scared to move here. And I wish I would have made this move a little bit sooner. I think, again, there's it's an age of stigma that's in our heads and it's in other people's heads that that prompts us not to work there. That's just my kind of theory on some of this stuff. Sharon asks, how much is your deposit to be on the waiting list at the community that you chose, Kitty? Is it refundable if you decide never to go there?
Okay, so the community that I signed up for is the one my mother went to, and it's Goodwin House at Bailey's Crossroads, if anybody knows it. The deposit is $1,300. $1,000 of that is refundable if I go off the waiting list, or it gets deducted from my fee if I move in, and $300 is admin and I don't get it back.
And that seems pretty reasonable to me.
Yeah, I think so.
And I love that. If y'all haven't heard me, I do a lot of comparisons between kids choosing the college that they're going to and these types of decisions. I will tell you that my daughter, against my better judgment, applied to 12 different universities recently. And some of just the entry fee application is like $300, I think, or something crazy like that. So yeah, a $1,300 fee. And I could even see potentially, and I've talked to people that have had entry waiting lists in 2 or 3 different places waiting to see which one came up first. Rosalind says, I spoke to many builders years ago regarding one-level homes with a garage in a neighborhood of varied ages. I spent years trying to find my dream home in Fairfax within 5 to 10 miles of medical care. All the builders said they need to construct vertically due to land availability and expense. I found some alternatives in other counties further out. Eventually, I needed to sell my 3-bedroom house and move to a condo. I love my condo, but I don't like the isolation of a senior building. Condo community is completely different from a house community. I wish, however, I still wish, however, reality defines. Yeah. I love it. But see, Rosalind, you're just like Kitty. You were out there looking, out there thinking and talking to builders and seeing if you could find something. And hopefully, although your home could be better, hopefully it's better than the one that you were in previously.
And I do think it's true. If you want to live in a city environment, you're giving up space.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, one way or another, you're going to live in a smaller space.
And one of our next to solo aging, our number one topic on this platform is what to do with our stuff. And again, another thing that I've interviewed a lot of people, we tend to feel like we need all this stuff. And once we figure out a way to memorialize it and give it away or sell it or put it in a better home, it's like, why was I so emotionally attached to all that? I don't need a 4-bedroom house for all my stuff. I can live in a 1-bedroom house. Linda says this would be a great roundtable discussion with a builder who does communities that are close to cities. I totally agree, Linda. I'm going to do some research, and if anybody's listening to this who's got a builder that might want to come on, and like a real interesting thing is, here's consumers making all these suggestions. I'm ready for the wet towel builder that's going to say, well, you can't do this and you can't do that, you know. But what would be great is to find a builder that's open to what are the limitations and what could people be doing. Rosalind, additionally, solo aging and independence, COVID comes into play. I upgraded my condo to ADA standards. Man, good for you, Rosalind. And you know, people like Rosalind and Kitty, they're inspirations. It's sort of take some action we need to all be taking action in our future. And certainly, Kitty, from being a caregiver for your mom, like, it doesn't sound like your mom was proactive the way that you are. It was more reactive, and to the point where you had to come in and make decisions, and that uprooted your life. You may have stopped working a few years early to do that as well.
Yeah, no, she wanted to stay where she was, and she actually tried to hide what was going on because she knew that there might be consequences. But our conversation was constantly, oh, I'll go there to next year. But then what happened was, and I think this happens a lot, there was a precipitating event. We had started talking about her moving to Goodwin House, which is where her friends were. I mean, it was and she had connections there. But then we had a precipitating event when she fell and broke her hip. She couldn't be alone, and she couldn't afford she couldn't afford to bring caregiving in. So at that point, even though she didn't want to go, she didn't have a choice.
Right.
And then it was just a matter of waiting until they could accommodate her, and that was a really hard, scary time when she was living alone, waiting for Goodwin House. Oh, and then when she got there, she was progressed in her dementia, and they rejected her because they said she can't live independently. And I appealed that, and they did let her in. But I mean, it was very on the line. And the reason that was important is financing. You have to go in independent in order for the financing to work. But we helped her a lot during the days that she was in independent living.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's see. And Rosalind, who I was complimenting as well, she says, Steve, I'm very proactive. However, reality determines what's possible at this point in time. And very wise words, Rosalind. And for those of you who weren't on our discussion yesterday, we had the day before yesterday, we had a discussion with Dr. Drew Leader, who on how to cope when we're not totally well. And I'm going to see if I can find this here. He created this little chessboard of healing. And what's really interesting about this is it's really, looking at what's happening with our body and our health, and then what is the attitude and what steps are we going to take? And you can sort of see in the beginning here, escaping the body. So many of us, when we have healthcare changes, we just ignore and refuse it. And I like your statement, Rosalind, about, we need to just accept the reality of what we're living in, and then do the best that we can to live in the body in the current state that we're in, and communicate with folks. Okay, let's see. I see there's a few more questions here. Kitty, your visions, inspirations, and willingness to share and ideas are bringing so much inspiration to me. that's great. That's what we wanted to have happen with this discussion today. Elizabeth says, which community had the excellent memory care where your mother stayed? So she received memory care at Goodwin Living.
At Goodwin House, Bailey's Crossroads.
Okay, great. Uh, and one thing that I also want to say that I think, and this is, I love Goodwin Living. They are a positive aging community champion. We've got lots of great providers, but folks, I want you to kind of hear one of the ingredients to really ensure good care for ourselves and our loved ones is being actively involved like Kitty was. I mean, I imagine you knew the folks over there, and the way you're describing, you were very actively involved in the community.
Well, my mother used to volunteer at Goodwin House, and when she broke her hip, she did rehab, and her church actually had connections at Goodwin House, and she actually did rehab at Goodwin House for the 21 days that was paid for before she went home. So that helped her get used to the idea of being there, and her friends that were already there visited her in the rehab, and it, that was just one step along the way. But yeah.
And let's see here. Oh, holy cow, we're almost to the top of the hour. We've got a few more. Elva says, how can I contact Kitty to invite her to speak at my group of ambassadors for aging well? Kitty, is it okay if I share your...
That would be fine.
Okay, so on the recording link, I'll have Kitty's email. So if you wanted to reach out and connect with her and see if there's a connection, that's great. And that Sharon says, helpful tip from Joyce Meyer: change your mind about the change. Yeah, I mean, change is hard for everybody, but we've got to change our mind about the change. I like that. I've never heard that quote. And then somebody says, things happen so unexpectedly and quickly, such as falling and breaking a hip. Your visions and planning are very helpful. They have a question about the wait list. How long, like, you put yourself on the wait list? Have you received calls saying that there's availability yet?
Oh no, I haven't been on the wait list very long.
Oh, okay.
I don't even know how long it is. At that particular community, you go on the wait list. There's a wait list for each unit type.
Okay.
And so I'm on 3 wait lists for the 3 unit types. And no, I haven't gotten the call. I just know how it works from when my mother was on the waiting list.
Okay.
So I will be on the waiting list for a while.
Right. And I like this too. This person says, can the community members look at and brainstorm and think about possibilities in addition to the wait list housing strategy? Absolutely. I mean, and this is what I love about what Kitty has illustrated to all of us, is she's come up with her vision of where she wants to live, and this is her perfect vision. And she said in the beginning, it's like, hey, the reason I came up with this vision is I'm not really into what I'm seeing out there as an alternative right now. But she's open-minded enough to say that if things changed, if I never find this utopian place for Kitty to live, I've got the insurance policy that I'm on a wait list of a place that I know and trust, that right. Was a great place for your mom to live and many other people. And I love this attitude. And I think this attitude is what's going to elevate the different places that we have to choose from in the future. Okay. Man, this has been great, Kitty. And is there anything that you want to share that you may have not shared? And out of curiosity, do you have children? No. Okay.
So, and that's, that is part of my thinking is, I don't have children to take care of me if something goes wrong. So, I'm going to do the best of taking care of myself.
That's actually what we should all be doing, whether we have kids and a spouse or not. Because at the end of the day, when I talk to people that are married about these types of decisions, I'll number one, I'll say, you realize that one of you is going to outlive the other. Oh yeah, yeah. And do you really want your kids taking care of you? And 9 out of 10 times it's sort of like, no, I want my kids to live their own life. And so all of us need to take sort of the actions that you're taking, Kitty.
Well, and when my mother was in Goodwin House, I met a lot of her friends who had moved to Goodwin House. And, the married couples with kids, a lot of them moved there because they didn't want to be a burden on their kids. And so when they started having health issues, or when they got a little into their 80s, this was a decision they made to move to Goodwin House because they didn't want their kids to go through what they went through with their parents.
Yeah. No, this is great. And we've got another, I'll make this the last comment here, but we did a discussion a while back on that brought up the Alzheimer's and dementia healthcare proxy, living wills, things of that nature, the estate planning documentation. And this person is saying, what kind of details can you include in your wishes for yourself, especially since most of us, like Kitty, have cared for other family members. And I really think, whether these wishes are in your legal documentation, it needs to be written down somewhere, and it needs to be a communication with your loved ones and your family members, so that they know that if, okay, I don't want to go to a memory care community, but if I have to, these are the things that I'd like to see,
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, Kitty, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. This has been a wonderful conversation today. And I hope that this is just the start to get the ball rolling of future conversations with other people sharing their ideas of what they envision for their future. And maybe we can make the world a better, more inclusive place for being older.
Well, and Steve, thank you for what you're doing to make the world a better place.
You bet. I love it just as much as all you do. Every one of these discussions, I never know what kind of questions are going to come up, and that's what gets me up in the morning. So, all right. Thanks so much, and we'll talk to you all soon.